Not making that mistake another time. Hi, Jason.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, Jason.
Howdy, Walt.
Hey, David.
Hello. Testing.
Test worked.
Test 1, test 2.
Success.
Try again.
How's everything in Woodfin these days?
You'll probably get 5 or 6 different answers given the lineup here.
Okay, it's 3 o'clock. Shall we get started? I'd like to start by reading the conflict of interest statement. In accordance with GS 18B201, it is the duty of every committee member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearance of conflicts. Does any member have any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflicts with respect to any matters coming before the committee today? If so, please identify the conflict or appearance of conflict and refrain from any undue participation in the particular matter involved. So with that, we'll call it to order, like an approval of the agenda. Come on, somebody speak up.
I move for approval. This is Gerald.
Thank you, Gerald. Glad you were able to get on the road. And approval of the minutes of last month's meeting. And note that due to technical difficulties, we don't have any minutes from the September meeting. If anybody wants to try to reconstruct those, I'd be happy to help, but at this point, it's kind of late. So could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last month's meeting?
I motion to approve last month's meeting minutes.
All right, and
I'll second.
okay, and do we have anybody from the public? I don't believe so. Okay, so moving on, first order of business is Equinox. Jason, I'll turn it over to you all.
Great. So I just want to really quickly introduce Riley. Riley Adams is from S2O, and he's going to be presenting on the wave, an update on the wave design today. So what our goal is today is to present to you guys the 30% site plan. So basically it's taking the comments from when we met and reviewed the master plan and shows the updates. And this plan is what we plan to take to the Board of Commissioners for their vote and approval. And once we have that, then we're going to start to get into the detailed design and construction documents. And so if you remember, at certain levels of design, we have opportunities to report back to you all. So basically it's the site plan, what we're calling 30% design. And from here, once we kind of move forward, then we're getting into more detail, and we'll come back to you guys again at the 75% level design, and then around the 90-95% as well. So what we plan to do today is talk a little bit about the park, turn it over to Riley to talk about the wave, and then we'll quickly touch on the schedule. And from there, I think I'll turn it over to Jason.
Great. Yeah, so do I have opportunity to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I'm gonna go into Share.
Share screen, yeah, there you go.
Okay,
And then you can share everything from there.
all right. So I want to bring up two things. The first was this document that was given to me by Walt, that was presented to the board about the recommendations that we offered a lot of different things we were looking from this committee to provide responses to, and this was a response to the majority of those items. And so I wanted to bring that up so to make sure that after I go through the plan, that we make sure that we show you how we addressed all those items. But first, I want to kind of give an overview and kind of catch everybody back up on the park. And so this is our 30%. There we go. And I go ahead and zoom in a little bit.
Is this all showing up on your screens? Can you see the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm just going to get in position here. Okay. So I think the major, I'm just going to point out the major differences from the master plan. We presented the master plan to you, and we're seeking advice on a lot of different things that we got from the survey and everything. So one of the things was that we learned from the survey, we learned from the trip to the Nantahala Outdoor Center, and during that whole process after the master plan, we converted the parking lot to a one-way loop. That actually allowed us to, not only was it more efficient as far as circulation goes, but it allowed us to actually fit in all 4 bays of parking. And we brought that loop under the bridge. So it previously ended here. We brought it under the bridge to maximize parking. And it also allowed us to get a more robust drop-off area. So we have here in this hatching here, it's kind of like a concrete hatching versus the gray, which is asphalt. We have the ability for buses and food trucks to be able to pull off and stop temporarily for other vehicles to maintain. This is a more vehicular size loop here. So it allows for a lot of larger vehicles to be able to pull off and unload large groups of people, or have food trucks in the future if the town so wishes. So that's one major change there. Another major change with the upper plaza is sort of a reduction of the amount of hardscape. So we kind of have this restroom changing facility, which we will give you more details. We have an architectural plan set that we're going to share with you. But this is kind of now feels like it's floating on an island of more softscape. So this would be planted areas. You can see here in green, kind of around that. And we have our stormwater feature. Instead of running right through the middle of the plaza, it kind of holds this edge. And there's a couple different areas like pedestrian bridges, just little pedestrian walks over the stormwater conveyance that get you to the restrooms and get you to this more passive use area. And I'm going to get into more detail. You can see here, this box is going to show this in more detail. And I just realized that's on the next sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and breeze through this a little more quickly. But we've incorporated the play that we had in the master plan for the overall phase. And you guys have suggested that we keep that in for phase 1. The Greenway changes to a 14-foot width. And instead of being on this side, it's moved to the center, and that's due to on-ground situation that we've noticed during site visits with how we've provided more depth in our stormwater response, basically in our design. For the parking here, we've bumped out this edge of parking. It requires a little bit of a retaining wall, but that buys us quite a bit of parking spaces, because as you know, the existing parking lot kind of curves in, and you're not able to get 2 bays of parking for quite a while. So this allows us to get 2 bays of parking in by pushing that out. It does require some additional cost, but from what we've heard from you guys mainly, parking is, we wanted to try to maximize parking the best we could without making the park a parking lot. And so what the easiest solution to do that was to add this retaining wall here. Now, this is a really cool feature here that I say cool, but it was like innovative in the way that we have very limited space. We wanted river access, we wanted trailer parking and all these things, but we also, the agencies wanted to preserve the trees. And so what we did is we're not actually taking out any additional trees in this area versus the master plan. We had this loop come around, if you recall. Now we just kind of do this loop here. What that does is it takes out the pavilion, and we've done an assessment on the pavilion, and it's, the pavilion's not, the most architectural of structures. And so we feel that we can reproduce a pavilion somewhere else where shelter is needed. And we've left the restroom, which we think is very important to have restrooms on both sides of the park. But we've got this now one-way loop for trailers, and all vehicles can use it, but for trailers can come around and use this. And we've got grass pave over here for 3 trailer stalls for parking. Now, what this allows is it allows the trailers to come and park for short amount of time while they are loading and unloading. And it's a relatively short distance. And I might just be able to zoom in temporarily. It's a large file size because there's a lot of information layered in this document. So forgive me for the loading time. But you can see there's a relatively short distance there from the trailer pull off, and these are 60-foot stalls. So this is about 20 feet maybe. So the trailers can park, and this is designed so that it's designed as a non-motorized ramp. So it can be poured as a concrete ramp to allow for easy ingress and egress for tubers and non-motorized boats such as kayaks and lighter weight boats. But I've also seen people out there, and other people have seen people with like little John boats with like where they've retrofitted little wheels on the back and kind of pull their John boat, and feel that this is a short enough distance to accommodate all those uses without having to have vehicular and pedestrian conflicts with a motorized boat ramp. And the grass pave allows us to keep an impervious, semi-impervious surface over here and reducing the overall impact. Now, that being said, we know there's been lots of discussions about the boat ramp. So we do want to point out that there is opportunity, if so decided, as the discussion continues, to do a motorized ramp. Now, what the motorized ramp would be is, so you have a loop here, the motorized ramp would be over here. So instead of a ramp being here, you would put a ramp in here. So the vehicles would turn around, come up here, and then back in. Now, we currently don't have that in the design, and if it is decided by the town to put that in the design, it's not a huge imposition to be able to make those changes. The reason we've currently left it out is because it does increase vehicular and pedestrian conflict, because you would be having trailers backing into a greenway. So the way we have it designed currently is you have your pedestrian use, you have your vehicular use, and they are separated. But there is a short enough distance for people to be able to move their equipment. I don't think I missed anything on the overall, did I, David?
Okay, you're good.
So I'm going to go ahead and move into the blow up, which is second sheet. There we go. Let me zoom out a little bit more. Okay, So this is a blow up. This is where the meat of the park is, right? So this is what we have here. We have our ADA spaces here. The main thoroughfare is seen to be here, right? So we have a mountable curb. Here we have like these truncated traffic calming domes. You know, they're just like little bumps to separate the slower parking traffic versus the through traffic. You have your constructed wetland, and you kind of have this circle pattern here, which is signifying the start of the river form that we have in from the master plan. And so you have interpretive signage here that starts that path, and then you can see this river form kind of comes through here. And then what that is it's a change in concrete or a material type, like color of the concrete or stamps in the concrete. And that flows through the whole park like it does in the master plan. What we have here is so that's the main thoroughfare. We have kind of like a seat wall here for people getting off buses and waiting for everybody. You've got your bike racks that this group wanted to include right here off the Greenway. You have your through here, and you'll see in the architecture, but this is like a breezeway. These are the changing stalls that are separate from the restrooms, and there's like a breezeway that goes through. But over here is kind of like a side path. So people who know where they're going and want a straight path, it's also our ADA path that you can kind of come off. All the ADA spots are over here. You can come off on this sidewalk around this abutment, which there's also educational signage here. And we thought that was a really interesting way to kind of view through the piles. We thought that was a very unique moment. But you kind of come off here, and then starting about right here, it starts to ramp down. So you have your overlook pavilion like we did in the master plan, and we'll show you the architecture on that. But this side path was a new addition. We thought that was a really neat way to add a different secondary path or circulation. And so those individuals can move straight down and then move out into here instead of like having to move through this main portion here. And like in the master plan, we have the stairs with the ramp integrated, and now this is all worked out grade-wise now. So the details of this have been worked out. So the actual shape of this is functional as far as grade goes, matching the grade of the ramp with the grade of the stairs. And then we have our terraces, like last time. Over here, this has been worked out in more detail. So the slope of this is really gradual for this. You can see this is the top of the slope and this is the bottom of the slope. Over here, this bump out allows for, this is the top of the slope and this is the bottom of the slope. So it squeezes it up, allows it for a more appropriate slide angle, right? So here is very appropriate and gentle for walking. Here, this is about 22%, and that's appropriate for a slide. And so what we have is 2 culvert slides. One is open, so it's just like a U shape. The other is half closed, so it's a complete closed culvert that opens up halfway through. And we have a rock scramble that comes up, so kids can do this circular motion where they go up the rock scramble and slide down the slide. There's some grade differential here, and you know, we can share the next set, 65%, the more detail of what that looks like. But up top, we thought that was a nice moment for passive recreation. So these circles are like picnic tables. And so people can sit here and wait for someone who's in the restroom, or they can sit here and watch their children here. They can sit here and watch the wave. It's just a nice place. People on the Greenway can come off, and if they don't want to interact with the park all too much, they can momentarily come and sit at one of these picnic tables. And so it just allows a moment for people to be able to wait and move through at their own pace. And I think I got most of it. So I'm wondering if I should take questions of anybody. Or if I should move to the architecture.
Do you want to show how you address some of the questions that
Oh,
you
yes.
first showed?
Yeah, great. Thank you, David. All right, so the committee liked where the master plan was with the amount of open space versus developed space, and we kept it the same. We did go ahead and change the width of the Greenway to 14 feet through the park. And the restrooms and changing facilities are separated through a breezeway. And actually the structures, the restrooms will be a prefab structure that will be cladded. So that part will be unique, but the main building will be prefab, and then the changing restrooms will be built, and they'll both be cladded to match each other. And we'll show you that in a second. Additional amenities, education, yes, so that's built throughout. We have, I think, 6 signs along the river form that runs through that shares historical facts, and we have educational signage in there for the ecological moments that we have where we're doing bank stabilization and around the stream. Beach area and play, let's see if it's on this blow up. But there is, it's over here, so it's on the screen above, but there is a moment where we kind of bump out the boulders and we allow for silt to kind of settle in. So a natural forming beach can occur there, and it's got some bench seating around it. And then this is more boulder access. So there's not as much silt or sand that built up in this area, but in this area down here, there is. So we have that. And also we have, you know what, I am going to show it because there it is, not too hard, loaded pretty quickly. Not that time. All right, so you can see here the beach. So this will catch water on occasion when the water levels are higher. So this will end up depositing sand. And so that creates a nice beach, but it's got some boulders that are in lower elevation. And then over here we have creek play. So we've kind of coved out, created like a little cove here of some sand play and access. And we've limited it. We don't want kids trampling all up and down the stream. So we made a moment, a place for them to go, and with like a little mud kitchen, so that there can be play here and then there can be play here that's water based. Nature playground. So we have, it's mainly going to be the Culvert Slides. There is a slack line and some rock scramble. The night lights, this will come at a future design when we get into more details, but it is intended that the stairs, the main staircase, be lit. Train platform. So we do not have a train platform. For cost purposes, what we decided is to leave that off for now because Rocky currently doesn't have a train platform where he departs, right? So what he typically does is uses a stool. And so what we made a note here is we left a spot where we thought it was most appropriate for the train to stop. And if, as long as we keep grade a good shoulder on the Greenway, we thought it would be relatively easy for the patrons to be able to get in and off the train without a formal train platform. And so they can get off and go to this passive area, then get off and use the restrooms, and then move through these 2 spaces to come down into the park. Seating near the wave. Yeah, so there's plenty of seating. So there's the concrete benches, there's the terrace seating, and then there's boulder seating. Grills, we don't have shown on this plan, although I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for any of the elements we have on the new portions of the park, but I think it is appropriate to add on the existing park side, especially if we add in the pavilion that we're taking out, and then bike racks we added. And then these were all elements that you were going to address further. Off-site parking, outfitter fees, boat rentals, lockers. Yeah, and so then I want to go ahead and show you the architecture. So as you know, Samsel is doing the architecture. So there are two options that we want you to look at. The first is a rectangular option, which is 50 by 35. The second is has like a more askew angle, and it's 50 by 40 on average. And then this is the detail of the restrooms. So we have women's and men's with individual stalls, and then we have 2 family rooms. And then these storage rooms One of them with an exterior door. We're going to get them to switch that, but one of them has an exterior door so they can move in and out like the power washer and what other equipment they need. And then the breezeway with the changing stalls. And so you can see here, the restroom, looks like this. We've got the split roof idea with the clear story windows and this horizontal cladding, wood cladding. And it's hard to see from this perspective, but these two structures don't actually ever touch. So they're actually separate structures. They're just put next to each other to kind of sing together. And then there's an opening down at the bottom, as you can see the changing stalls, and it's open at the top. So it's very airy. So it doesn't get too musky in there. And then for cleaning purposes, you can just kind of spray all that out. So this design is the same through both. We just have two options for you with the pavilion. The first one's the rectangular form, and then you can see we've got this angular kind of approach going to help mimic the mountain forms that we talked about in the master plan. And they've gone with steel posts to be able to open up the inside there. And they made them thinner to kind of have them disappear more. So these will be thicker timbers on the outside. And then the second option is very similar to the first, but what they did was, if you can see my hands, is they took that higher plane and they kind of tilted it. So it overlaps more on this side and it doesn't hardly overlaps on this side. Now, if you guys like this option, we talked about it internally, we would have the architects kind of spin this around so that the part that's more open would face the river, whereas the part that's more closed would face the parking. But if you wanted to see them in kind of bird's eye view, that's kind of the two options. Is you've got the two rectangles overlapping orthogonally, and then the second option is where you've got another degree of another dimension where you're changing the angle. And so that's all the design. Were there anything about the design that really, I guess, is an issue, right? We're looking to see if there are any issues with the committee on the design where it stands.
If you guys don't have any questions, then we should turn it over to Riley to talk about the wave. Why don't we do that then? Why don't we, Riley, you can share your screen if you want.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Riley Adams. I work for S2O Design and Engineering. Most of you probably know Dane, but Dane's up in Alaska this week, so I'm covering for him, and hopefully I don't mess him up too bad. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So I'll just kind of briefly walk through what he's worked on so far. So I'll annotate this so it's a little easier for those of you who can see my screen. So right here is the wave feature. And what we've been working on so far is adjusting the geometry for low, medium, and high flows, and trying to balance what we want to do with the wave with, we've been going through 1D modeling and trying to make sure that we aren't affecting 100-year flood levels. So that's one of the kind of balancing acts we've been doing right now, and playing with some of the grading along the banks to make sure that we can get the wave character we want without affecting those flood levels. And then on this side is the bypass channel. And we've consulted with fisheries ecologists to make sure we're using the right design criteria. So this may look a little bit more extended than it did in the concept that Jason just showed. And the idea here is we're trying to make sure that we maintain an appropriate slope for fish to make it up through. So right now we're at like a 2 to 3% slope there to make sure that we can pass native species. And I will actually just show you, we've been working lately on a preliminary 30% design surface. And we're going to plug this into a 3-dimensional model so that we can get a better idea of what we're looking at for velocities and what the wave character is going to look like. And so this is going to look a little funny, but here you go. So this is looking upstream. And again, where's my annotate buttons? Okay, there we go. Again, this is the wave feature here. So you can see we have our low flow notch. So at the lowest flows, we're trying to kind of channelize the current so that we can keep those velocities up and make a good wave even at the lowest flows. And then the wave will improve as it gets higher and higher. One thing we really have been struggling with, and we finally have kind of overcome it, is the height of the existing dam downstream creates quite a backwater effect upstream, kind of a lake. And so we've had to raise this structure a little bit higher than we originally intended. But I think we've kind of struck the right balance now, and we're pretty happy with where we're at. So again, this is the island here between the whitewater structure and the bypass channel right here. And this is a very, I guess, very smooth representation of what it'll look like, just because we're working with lines in CAD, but this will be a lot rougher. It'll be a grouted boulder structure. It'll look a lot more natural. But for our modeling purposes, this is what we've got. So, and one of the things that we had to do, which Jason and David, we've been discussing, is we had to kind of lower this area in here because of creating rise in flood levels at higher water when we raise this structure. And so that's where I'm talking about. We've been kind of playing with the grading is along this bank right here in particular. So, and I think that's probably most of what I can kind of report on for Dane. Right in here, you'll see some of these strange shapes. These are actually the bridge piers from just downstream that we're going to have to cut them down a bit to make sure that they don't affect the wave or create a safety hazard, but we're not planning on taking that down too far. So yeah, I think that's probably about all I have to update on. David and Jason, is there anything else you wanted me to hit on in particular? Or?
No, I just think that the big thing is, I know you guys were working really hard on achieving a no rise condition, and it sounds like when we talked with Dane last, you guys were able to achieve that.
Yeah, barely, but we got it to work eventually. It's a lot of it's like that on most projects. It's a bit of a balancing act to get things to work out, but I think we're in a good place right now. And like I said, this is a preliminary structure, but Dane put this together so that we can start doing some 3-dimensional modeling and really get a better idea of what the wave's going to look like. So,
And I wanted to point out while you're on this screen that this, this part, that part is cut a little lower, right? But I wanted to assure everybody that this park is being designed to be able to flood portions of it, right? So the main, all the main, investments of the park are up on the top here. And this is mostly open space down here. And there are some play elements, but all the play elements are being designed to be able to flood, right? Especially, we're focusing on the culverts and whatnot and making sure we're not getting like ponding down there. And then we have hardscape, and the slopes that we're choosing are allowing it so that the water can flow in easily and flow out, more importantly, out easily, so that you don't get sediment buildup. And then altogether, this portion is still higher than the existing park down here. So it's still a little bit higher. So the existing park is still going to end up flooding first. And then this park on occasion will flood, but it is being designed to flood so that you don't we don't lose any investment, and also design such a way that it is protected during a flood, right? And we don't have huge maintenance issues. And I just wanted to make sure that that was, because I know we talked about cut, and you can see it, especially in this 3D model, which is really nice, that we've pushed the cut from existing here. If this was all built up, and then we pushed it back. So we're cutting from there back to this wall here. So hopefully that, if anybody had any concerns about flooding, that we're on it.
Great. Maybe we can pull up the schedule real quick and just kind of touch on that, and then we'll be done with our presentation. If there's any questions that you would like to ask at that time, if we haven't covered anything.
Okay, so we are here in November where we are getting ready for the board to review and vote on the site plan. That's the star. And then the town can be expecting 30% cost estimates. I know there's been some chatter about cost estimates. We're actually currently working on them. And so they need to go through a vetting process, but they should be done by next month. And then, we'll move into 65 or 60% design. And then we have some public outreach, and 60% cost estimates will follow at that time. And then we move into 100% design. So during the public outreach, it doesn't say it in here, but this will come back to you guys after the 60% to look at the plan.
Just like we're doing today, we'll review it with you.
And then at the 100% design, we're looking for final board approval of the documents before, we finalize and send it out for permitting, because that's going to be quite a while, the permitting process on this project. So we have estimated 6 to 9 months of permitting, because there are multiple permits, and each permit requires a different amount of time they're allowed to review, but the wave itself we're anticipating to take the longest. And some of these permits require other permits to have kind of gone through before they will look at it. So 6 to 9 months for permitting. And then since that time frame takes us into bat moratorium, we can't do any clearing during bat moratorium. So actually it would be good for the town to utilize that time to, have the RFP go out and award the project and get everybody on the same page as far as the contractor, and kind of we can do the pre-construction meeting and all that kind of stuff until next November or November 2023, when construction can then start after the bat moratorium. So the first thing that's going to happen with construction is the clearing and the grading. There's a lot of earth movement that has to happen. And so that's going to take quite a while. As you can see, we have 3 months for that. And I think that's a decent estimate, but that can range. And then construction of the wave. So construction of the wave needs to happen before peak hurricane season 2024. So construction of the wave is going to happen here, and simultaneously land construction can happen, but that can happen during hurricane season. So if there can't be overlap, then that can start here. And then so we're looking at towards the end of the year 2024 for this park to be completed.
So this is what we plan to present to the Board of Commissioners, hopefully next week. And we're just kind of giving you guys the preview and also the opportunity to ask us any questions or provide us with any feedback or comments.
I've got a couple of questions. For the bridge pilings, previously they talked about having to remove them, but Riley indicated only having to lower them. And there was some question about how involved that was going to be. Do they in fact have to come out? And I didn't see any indication of that, the bridge head wall, but at one point it was talked about making that a play feature or, some sort of, notable something or other. Or are you planning on removing it because it's a big chunk of concrete?
You're talking about this one right here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one right here is going to remain. I think it would be cost prohibitive. I mean, so yes, S2O is recommending that these be lowered. So
And we're gonna defer to them on how far down they have to go and things like that.
and so I think the main thing is to make sure that there are no safety hazards, right? I think in their modeling, they've lowered them to just below the water surface, if I recall what Dane told me last. And so, yeah, we'll defer to S2O on how far do they lower, but the hazards need to be removed, or they should be removed to reduce liability for the town. And this one is not. This one will remain, and there has been conversation about including historical information on there to allude to the idea of the old pre-Civil War railroad.
Might be good to label on the plan, actually, that one stays.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, how are you going to share these documents with us so that we'll have, a little more time to study them on our own?
Yeah, so I can provide a link to some sort of electronic repository where we can house these documents. I think in the past I've shared a Dropbox folder, and if the town's using that Dropbox folder, I can keep that Dropbox folder and put these in there. Or, I can use a OneDrive folder. They'll be stored electronically in the cloud, and then I can share that link.
Luke or Eric, do you guys have a preference for how to work that?
Luke, I defer to you.
No, I don't.
Okay.
You're using.
We'll just get something set up and we'll send you guys the link, and then you can share with the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee.
Luke, I just think now's the time. I don't know if you guys I can't recall if you guys are currently using a folder that we've set up, but I think we're early enough in the process that, whatever folder I send out now, I think maybe we can move forward with that for all additional documents. Okay.
Right. Yeah, so we'll get that set up, Walt, and we'll get that so you guys can take a look at that.
I have a few questions. I was wondering about just a couple points of clarification or to elaborate on. Jason, you mentioned additional stormwater features. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so it's not quite seen on this plan. It's more behind the scenes analysis that we've done, but we have kind of worked out a lot of the stormwater, at least, where we're comfortable with, to like the 30% level. And so all the stormwater from the parking is going to pitch into this center. Now this, typically you want to try to preserve about 10% of the impervious space for your stormwater. And this does that. So we have, I believe we're at about 11 feet across here. So there's good width for conveyance of water. And then we have 2 constructed wetlands on either end of the parking for our stormwater treatment and storage there. For all this impervious up here at the top, it's going to collect into this dry creek feature that, you may have seen images in the master plan of it. But what it is basically it's cut in the pavement, and then you have kind of rocks down below where the water can convey underneath, and then it goes here. Once it hits here, it's going to drop underground, and we're suggesting a subsurface storage of the water under here. And I have on the next page, I'm not going to scroll through because it's taking so long to load, but on the next page, it's about a little dotted box of where that is going to be located, and it's like right here. And the overflow of that is going to be piped. You can see this gray line here, that's a pipe, and it's going to be piped to this treatment swale that runs along here. And then you can see another box and a pipe that kind of goes out there. So this is going to treat all the runoff from the Greenway from this section. This underground storage will treat all the runoff here. The 2 constructed wetlands will treat all the runoff here. And then on this side of the park, we have the runoff from here is going to run into here. So we have an existing constructed wetland, and we're going to build onto that similarly to how we did in Silverline Park, where we have constructed wetland that treats the water first before it makes its way into the existing wetland. This is kind of the dividing line. All the water from this side is going to flow towards this and exit into the creek. And then the water over here is going to flow in this direction, and we have it moving and it's going to exit this way. So this right here, you can see this blue line right here. This is going to be like a treatment swale. So we're doing what we're going to do here is we did a pretty detailed analysis of existing trees, which trees are healthy, which trees are not. And on top of that, we layered on what we thought would be good for the stormwater drainage based on the topography of the site and the design. And when we layered them on top of each other, it actually worked out really well, where the areas where we're planning on doing cut and alterations to the paths in the existing park are areas where the trees were of poor health. And so we've maximized that and tried to minimize the amount of healthy trees that we're removing. And so we have basically everything from here is going to go alongside the Greenway. You know, so there's going to be some culverts here and here, but it's going to run this way and then dump into the river that way. And this portion of the Greenway currently, this location and this location, this is all going to be new, this whole section of Greenway. And it currently in here and here gets a lot of silting. And so the idea is we're going to raise the Greenway and then lower sections where there's going to be stormwater. So we're creating a little more differential in the park than currently exists. So all the water on this side of the Greenway is going to flow, natural surface flow into the river, and then the water on this side of the Greenway, because we're raising the Greenway, so the Greenway is going to act almost as like a little bit of a berm. And all the water on this side is either going to move, if you're starting from this point, it's going to move in this direction, and if you're starting at this point, it's going to move back into the creek. And we just have specialized areas where we're thinking about enhancing existing wetland features. And so we're putting the water where the water wants to go and keeping it off of the Greenway is the idea there. I hope that helps answer your question, Brian.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm just going to chip away a couple more quick ones. The additional parking from 81 spaces, remind me what it was previously.
Well, the total number of spaces between both parking lots previously was about 100. I think it was 96, somewhere around there. I don't recall the exact number, but now the total number of spaces is 120. I don't remember the breakdown per lot, but we gained somewhere from 20 to 25 spaces between the two.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. The expanded ramp, can you elaborate on that a little bit for us?
The expanded ramp?
Do you mean the ramp, the pathway that comes from the parking lot that leads down?
The ramp, I perceived it as the boat ramp.
Oh, the boat ramp, the boat ramp.
Oh, the boat ramp.
Yes.
Yes. So this guy, the expanded ramp river access. Okay. So currently, you can see here, this dash line underneath the opaque or the transparent white is the existing cut, and there's stone steps. What we're proposing is to expand that cut a little bit on the left, but mostly on the downriver side, to expand it. Now, based on feedback we've got for access that river users prefer, as boat users especially, is a ramped access instead of a stepped access. So we're currently proposing it as a concrete ramp. And that ends basically at the Greenway. So it's a short little ramp, but it's when I say extended on the plan, we mean extended width-wise. So I think we have about 40 feet of width. It's not dimensioned on here. I don't have dimensions on here, but pretty sure it's about 40 or 45 feet. And then this white is a crosswalk, so that's not considered concrete. And then this back here is could be grass paved, but it's basically a staging area. It's kind of marked off some way to be a staging area because there's a lot of people that's going to come out and cross the Greenway, and then this allows them space so they're not just standing on top of the Greenway to be able to like organize themselves.
Thank you for that. And also, you know, I often, you know, see old piers and old bridges that are left in place when a new one is added. And I've always thought personally, it'd be nice to see, you know, see the demo, you know, remove and replace happen in full. What's the rationale behind leaving any of an old structure, any part of an old structure like that? And, you know, just elaborate a little bit on the rationale behind the decision making there.
Are you talking about this rail line pile?
Yeah, the old bridge piers that you talked about cutting down a bit versus leaving or getting rid of altogether.
Okay, so it's a cost. I think it's a cost thing, Brian. I think to remove all the piles completely may be an extensive amount of work, but we don't really know until someone goes down. So, you know, you got a diver, someone with a mask and some, you know, can get underwater and really look at it, because we're not sure how those piles are tied to the bedrock, right? So they could be rebarred into the bedrock or whatnot. So depending on how S2O decides to go about this, right, they may have to isolate all of these piers to be able and remove them in the dry, which you know, as you know from the cost from Silverline, coffering up and isolating stuff in the French Broad River is pretty expensive, and that may be inevitable no matter which way they go. So again, we're kind of deferring to S2O as far as how far they're recommending removing these.
So the how far recommended removing correlates with the safety aspect of things primarily, right?
Yes. So safety is the number one. Yeah.
And Riley, it's also the how it impacts the no rise and all that as well, correct?
Yeah, that and how it affects the wave, because if we leave them too high, it's raising that tailwater elevation below the drop and it may end up drowning out the wave. So we need to find that happy medium. But like Jason and David were saying, it's primarily the only reason we wouldn't take them all the way out is a cost savings. You know, obviously I think it's ideal if we get everything out of the river, but if we can cut them down enough so that we can cover them and have the channel bottom protecting from any potential injury, then I think we could probably leave part of them in. But we're still working on how much we need to actually cut those down. I think right now Dane's got him at an elevation of 1928, and we may have to lower him even a little bit more than that because that may be sticking up too much into the pool below the wave. So we're still looking at it.
And I'm assuming that the only way to really know what it's going to take to remove that is to actually get someone in there and look at it. And we could do that before construction, but typically I would anticipate that would happen maybe during construction when you have equipment out there. So it might be one of those things where we might not have an answer to that before we go to construction, unless the town wants to spend the money to do a little additional investigation on those beforehand.
Okay.
I would say from a project standpoint, I would put it at our intent would be to remove them, but it's good to have a fallback if it becomes cost prohibitive. We've got to get them to a certain level. Ideally, we take them all the way out, but at least we can fall back to that.
Yeah,
that's a good approach. And it may, you know, the expensive part here is the dewatering, the water control. So it may be the case that once you get this area dried out, you want to just take them all out, take them all the way out since you're already there and working in that area. So yeah, I think that's a good approach.
All right. I appreciate you guys sharing at 60%, we'll see the cost estimate. It would be helpful for us, at least, in my opinion, I'd like to hear from the rest, if not, to see, how any scope changes affected the budget. That, there may be, whether it was material cost increase or scope additions, to be able to see that compared to the original budget. And then secondly, I'm curious how, with the additions that you shared today, and I think they're all, it's very, very well thought out. Good job presenting. How did it affect the schedule, exhibiting the completion date at the end of 2024 now?
So you will be receiving cost estimates next month. So you don't have to wait till 60%. You'll be getting 30% level cost estimates. We're working on them now. They just have to go through a vetting process.
Okay,
So
great.
yeah, you should be able to, you'll be getting those relatively soon. And so I hope that helps there. And then as far as the schedule goes, again, we've learned since the master plan, we've learned more about the permitting process. And what that did is that kind of pushed the project just into this bat moratorium. And that's what pushed it the extra year. So if the permitting comes back, if the permitting does come back sooner, it's possible to start sooner maybe, but really it comes down to the environmental aspects of the project and the permitting is what changed the schedule there.
We're trying to convey a more realistic schedule that maybe we can do better and improve upon, as opposed to what's been happening to us in the town, where we put out a schedule and then one little thing happens and we can't meet that schedule anymore. So this has a little bit more flexibility than previous schedules that we've been using, and one that we feel is more realistic. And so we work with Luke to kind of talk through that a little bit to get to this place.
I appreciate that clarity. And at the 30%, as far as the cost estimate goes, just to kind of clarify, are you able to exhibit the changes that led to the expected increase?
So on that one, I think it would make sense to do that from the 30% to the 60% to the 100%, because we're in design now, whereas before we're doing a master plan, which is kind of big picture planning.
Order of magnitude type of.
Yeah, we're not able to get the quantity takeoffs that we are now, because we're in the level of detail that we can get to. So I think moving forward, I think that would be something that I think we can do. Sure. It would be a lot harder to do between the 30% and the master plan.
I think we can highlight, I think maybe, Brian, you correct me if I'm wrong. I think what you're asking for is there were some additional items that your committee suggested to include that were not in the phase one. And so would it be helpful to you if we highlighted what those items were in the cost estimate so that you could kind of on your own add up what those totals were and how much of an impact those had?
Yeah, I think it's important to do that at each phase if possible.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. That's something, the things that we're adding, we can definitely show that.
So we can show that. And like you said, Brian, you'll be able to know there are areas where there are material cost increases. So if you do look at this one and compare it to the master plan, you'll notice that there are increases on most of the line items. And that's just the nature. We're trying to be very realistic with the cost estimates, and that's just the nature of where we are right now.
And what we're doing is we're just using the most current cost estimates that we're getting on our projects and applying those unit costs. So as we see them increase, we can apply it. And that's really the best we can do without having a cost estimator kind of looking at this and at each phase.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Very well done. I appreciate it. And then, just kind of transitioning into any other questions, my last question is this bat moratorium. What is that all about?
So this area is home to the
gray bat.
the gray bat and possibly the long-eared is the long-eared gray bat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the full name. And so the tree canopies are used for nesting and foraging. And so the permitting agencies do not allow any clearing during the bat moratorium while they're nesting and foraging. And so it's quite a long period of time.
That's
Now,
crazy.
construction can happen during that time, but you can't clear a site, right? So
You can't cut the trees down.
can't cut the trees down that need to be cut down, and the grubbing of the shrubs and whatnot, and the vegetation. So, and that's typically what happens first on a site. So, you can't really construct the rest of the site until we do the clearing. So we have to wait until we're not within that window to do the clearing.
And that's six months out of the year, and it's specific to this site because
It's specific to this site. If this is a known location for this endangered bat to be foraging and nesting, yes.
And so because we're meeting with the regulatory agencies, Fish and Wildlife Resource Commission, as we progress with design, they're giving us feedback and saying, okay, well, if you're gonna try to get this wave permitted, these are some things that you need to pay attention to. And this was one of them that they brought to our attention. There could be other things that we learn as we progress, but this is one that they shared with us when we met last time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And we are early, we're 30%, but we are even at this stage really trying to factor in all of the different aspects that will be affecting the different phases of construction, right? So the peak hurricane season is tied to the wave construction, obviously, lessons learned from Silverline. And then the bat moratorium, like I said, and there may be additional things, right, that come up.
There's the elk toe, Appalachian elk toe. And so there might be some monitoring that they request as part of this project as well. Those are things that haven't been determined as of yet, but those are things that we've been made aware of.
Okay. Thank you all.
You got it.
Back to the expanded boat ramp, if that's done in concrete, is that going to entail a cofferdam as well?
Yes.
And Rocky pointed out that the way that the cars currently back in close to his railroad tracks, that a pickup truck with a bike rack on the back can all but or maybe completely block his train. Is there any plan to create a buffer there? He was talking about a fence, but just something to keep vehicles far enough away.
Yeah, that's a good note, Walt. I had not heard that before. So, we can include like some sort of a fence or like a split rail or something. I don't
I'm
know.
almost wondering, I can't remember, are there currently wheel stops?
There are wheel stops.
Yeah, I'm wondering, because usually wheel stops, you have to have 3 feet from the wheel stop to whatever's happening beyond it to kind of have that clearance. So I'm wondering if maybe those need to be adjusted a little bit. That's something for us to look at, because we hadn't heard that either, that there's vehicles that are actually infringing on his railroad track. I have not heard that before.
Well, he talked about either having to or almost having to have a vehicle towed at one point. And I would think that wheel stops would be, the least expensive, effective way to do that.
Yeah.
But, and a fence seems to me like it's just going to be something that gets bent up over time. But be that as it may, it was an issue that he raised the other day, that frequently the vehicles, when they back in, they're right on top of him.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look at that, and it could also, a guardrail could also help serve that purpose too, if we have to do both. But I guess that's going to just have to be one where the town has to decide what level that they want to work at to address that. But I think, we can definitely let us look at the clearance for the existing wheel stops and see if that should be sufficient. And if it's not, then maybe that would be a simple fix.
And another opportunity is, right, so since if the town does vote to approve this plan, where we are adding additional, like we are amending the parking lot, this may be opportunity, if that's an issue, if we're gonna amend it, maybe we can shift it a couple feet,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Rocky
Just a
threw out
quick
the
question.
number of 3.5 feet as he said if there were to be a fence constructed, it would ideally be 3.5 feet from the rails.
From the rail, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
One quick question on when you expand that parking area, how tall, do you know how tall the retaining wall will be?
I think it ranges from 2 to 3 feet.
Okay, that's not bad. And the pedestrian connection on that end then would have steps, right?
Yeah, so there's steps identified. Yeah, I know it's hard to see at this scale, but there's steps to identified right
Okay.
here. But then this is a natural surface trail that can come off on grade.
Okay,
And then at
great.
the other end of the parking lot, Gerald, you also have a pathway to get down to the boat ramp and to the greenway.
This is an ADA accessible path right here.
Okay, good. And just as a side comment, I like the trailer parking that you're showing and not backing across the greenway. I think that would result in at least a minimum number of conflicts.
Yeah, yeah. That was a major concern that we had, and so that's why we're not showing the boat ramp across the greenway.
Thanks, good job.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. I just wanted to quickly learn a little bit more about PR and community outreach and wanted to confirm that's around the 60% design. Is that correct? And is there going to be some KPIs, some benchmarks as far as the amount of responses? And will you be issuing the press release, or will it be a collective effort, or should it come from Woodfin?
Are you asking Jason and I that question specifically?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so that is a great question. I know that we have planned to do some sort of public meeting. And I think we plan to do like a video. So I'd have to go back and revisit exactly what all that we said we're gonna do.
Okay.
But I think having a coordinated effort with you all would be very important, and like the specific outreach of like notifying people of the meetings, we weren't planning on doing. I think we're relying on the town to do that, and perhaps you all could help with that. But we can revisit that because I don't actually remember. We've been so focused on trying to get to this level, I can't remember what comes next.
No problem.
So I can, if you want, I can revisit the scope, and maybe I can send something out just to kind of say, hey, this is what we can expect with the public outreach component.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll do that. Thanks, Carol.
I've got a question about the removing of the pavilion, and will there be another pavilion added on the existing park area?
Yeah, so we currently don't have that in the cost estimates that or in the drawings. It's something we've been going back and forth about, that I think this is something that the town maybe needs to make a decision on. But I think the reason we've been going back and forth on it is because we have a couple local Woodfin or near Woodfin residents who born and raised that work here, and they're telling they say that for the local residents that the pavilion is a really important aspect, and I agree. Sheltered space came up in the survey. So that being said, it's currently not shown, and so I think we would pass that ball on to the town whether or not they want to include that.
So as you can recall, we've got the bigger pavilion that we're talking about putting up at the higher part of the park near the wave. And to expand the parking and to get a turnaround and to expand the boat ramp, We just didn't have the space. And so we had to make the call of whether to remove the existing restroom or the pavilion. And when we looked at the condition of the pavilion and the layout and the topography, and how to get some of the trailer parking in, we just couldn't accommodate it all. And so then we talked about maybe moving it, but then you have to remember we have a power line corridor, a fiber optic line, and an MSD line that are all going through here. And so we really couldn't find a really alternative location to locate it within this section of the park. So that's kind of how we kind of landed on the decision to remove it based on this plan.
So you're
Just,
saying that even if we did say, we really want that pavilion back, I mean, I like the idea. I think I think you've come up with a really creative solution, but I also think the pavilion would be greatly missed if it were not replaced. And so are you saying that even if we all said, yes, we want the pavilion somewhere down on that lower area, that it's not reasonable to do?
No. I think there could be a place for the pavilion. I don't think that's necessary. Yeah, I think there could be a place for the pavilion. I just, it's just not shown here, right? So if the town wants the pavilion, then we can put the pavilion in.
Like you see that turnaround right now. So to the east of that, you can start to see a lot of line work, and that it would be challenging to kind of fit it in anywhere down in that location. But if you went back towards the west, and in between some of the pathways, we could try to relocate it there, but we're also creating wetlands in those locations and we're grading it down.
I think if we rearrange, these are existing paths, the way they're drawn here, these three, or this spur, and the spur are existing, right? So if this gets rearranged, I think there's room right here, right?
So it could be something that we show as an alternative location, and then when we get bids for this, the cost for trying to relocate it can be determined then at that point, because maybe it costs $30,000 to relocate it, or it could be a lot more. And so then it's a cost decision that the town can weigh with other things.
Okay, thank you.
Just anecdotally, back in maybe April or May, I stopped down there one morning and there were 25 or more people under the pavilion playing ukuleles. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, we know that sheltered places are very valuable in parks. Pavilions are really important, and you know, in this case, we're just as of drawn, we're trading, right? We're trading the 20 by 20 or 20 by 30 for a 50 by 40 pavilion at a different part of the park. But I think there is opportunity to have both. We're just, as is, we're currently not showing it. And if the town decides that, you know, want us to put it in, we'll find a place for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys can let us know if that's a recommendation that you have for us. And maybe you can let us know if that's a recommendation before we present to the commissioners. If that's possible, which I think we're on. Luke and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're scheduled to present next Tuesday.
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So if that's something that y'all want, then maybe you can either let Eric or Luke know, or let us know, or what have you, so we can at least bring that up and mention that.
As far as construction, the way it's presented now, do you see construction going on throughout the park at the same time? Meaning, you know, the expansion of the parking area, the trailer parking and all of that?
So I'd imagine the contractor's going to phase the way they do their work, right? So the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to, on this side of the park, all this is going to be taken out, So they have to break up the concrete in here. They're gonna reuse this concrete surface for a subsurface. The concrete that's over here, they're gonna have to haul off, and then they're gonna start the work of digging this down. It's about 12 feet of cut. Then they're gonna come in. My guess is when they have access, now that they've brought this down, and then construct the wave. Once the wave is constructed, they're gonna back out and start doing the park work. Now, the park work is probably gonna be done in 2 phases. You're probably gonna have this work done, and then I don't imagine they could, but they may break it up where they do the work on the west side and then do the work on the east side. Especially if the town wants the park to continue to be used, right? So I imagine them breaking the work up that way, but that's a discussion I think to be had at pre-construction meeting with the contractor.
Does anyone else have any questions for?
All right.
Do you all have any more comments then? David or Jason?
Oh, do we have any more comments? No, I think you guys asked some good questions. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else.
No, I'll work on getting these documents in a place so that I can send you the link as soon as possible, so that you guys can look at it and if at all possible, get us a response on the pavilion if that's something that you guys want.
And on that pavilion, if you could phrase it, if possible, include the pavilion, because one of the reasons we changed this alignment was because when we met with the regulatory agencies, the original master plan design had a parking lot that was going to remove a lot more of the canopy trees, and they were really asking us to try to minimize and avoid those impacts. And so we just want to make sure that if we do put it back, we're not putting it in a place where we're going to have to remove the trees that we avoided having to impact by redesigning this. And so that's just, if you can give us a little flexibility on that, like if possible, please relocate this within the property. So that gives us a little bit of flexibility in case we run into a problem where, hey, if we put in this location, which is the only location that could really work, we have to take down 5 canopy trees, and that's going to be an issue with the regulatory agencies. So if you can just kind of help us that way, that'd be helpful.
For perspective, in the master plan, this area right here that I'm circling would have removed somewhere just shy of 30 trees. And in the design we have now, we're removing about, I think, 2. So we're saving 28 trees by going with this design versus the master plan.
That's great, thank you. I do have one more thought on the restroom. Is it reasonable to ask that the restroom be sort of upgraded to fit the pattern that's going on the uphill or the in the new area? The same, I understand the structure needs to stay the same, but can it be kind of resurfaced on the outside or?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
It's just cost.
it could be like skinned to kind of look like the other restroom facility. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because then the whole park will feel like it's the same park, and we'll have that continuity with the architectural elements, and it won't have this old restroom and everything else is new. So I think that's a good observation and a good point.
And if you all will remember too, the master plan had a phase 1 and phase 2 for Riverside Park. So that also could factor in depending on funding and cost estimates. Not the restroom upfit, but just anything in this park, in this design.
Yeah, like that, the retrofitting the restroom or upgrading it, relocating the pavilion, that could be pushed and pulled into different phases depending on the funding you all have available to implement the construction. That's a good point. Great. Well, thank you so much for allowing us to present this to you and for the comments and the feedback. And we really appreciate it. And keep letting us know if we're on the right track, because we appreciate that. And we'll look forward to getting the go ahead. Like we said, we won't be progressing beyond this level of design until we get the thumbs up from the town, because we don't want to get too far in advance and then maybe have to redesign something. So this is the point where if we're going to change something, this is the time to do it. So all your comments are very helpful.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
I guess we'll get off the call to let you guys continue with your meeting. Does that sound good, Walt?
Yeah, fine.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Riley.
Bye.
Thanks, Riley.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Okay, moving on with the agenda, particularly because Coral might have to jump off. Let's go right into communications.
Excuse me, Walt. This is
Yes.
Darryl. Do we need a recommendation recommending that 30% plan to the commissioners?
I think we probably need to spend a little time thinking and talking about it before we're moving right into a recommendation.
Okay. Okay.
But I was also trying to be conscious of Coral's. She said she was going to have to jump off at 4:30 to 4:40.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Just checking.
If that's still the case, Coral.
Hi, well, hi, this is Lucy. I also need to leave at 4:45 today.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can go through what we've been up to, the communications committee, pretty quickly. But are we ready as a group to move on, or did we want to talk about the pavilion more, or do we want to regroup a separate meeting after we've all had a chance to digest what we've just heard?
Well, we really don't have very much time before next Tuesday's meeting. I'm going to be out of town for that. But, you know, I based on previous comments, I do believe that we should move in phases on this. And I'm a little concerned about the cost of a cofferdam for the ramp, and having visited the boat ramp that's up in the River Arts District, I question the need for a 40-foot wide ramp, which is what he indicated that was. But that, of course, is all predicated on how the Greenway is brought through there, whether it's that wide because they have to create a swale. And he also talked about the fact that that was going to be grassed, and that is not particularly my understanding of how that the Greenway and to the extent it's going to be used for bikes is going to be used either. So it would seem to me that there were a number of questions in the existing part of the park that could be deferred, or certainly if we can resolve it now, that'd be fine. But I would need to study the plans some more. Eric, what would you like from the committee?
Well, I think it would, if I were a board member and I were taking this into consideration, and I guess let me just take a step back. There is no reason that we have to rush this, nor the board voting. So the board could receive a presentation, for example, next week, and then not have a vote until the following month, if that's better and more comfortable. This is a lot of information to digest, and I recognize that, and I think there have been a lot of really important questions asked today. Nothing significantly departing from what was there. So that's on the other side of the argument. I think if this board could, or this committee could provide something in writing, if these were the questions that we asked, that might be sufficient. But I believe that my recommendation at this point might be to wait and give you all a month to put your recommendation together if you believe that that is important.
I believe that that's the function of the committee. So yes, I think it's important that we, develop a consensus or at least a list of our questions and thoughts, and then present them with the recommendations as was done the last time.
I agree with Walt on this. I think that is the best solution.
I think the critical path is not going to be affected based on that bat moratorium. Honestly, that's putting a pause in the middle of everything. The permitting is a wild card, understandably. So unless someone else sees that differently, I don't see that the schedule is impugned by waiting 1 month.
I think you cut down on the opportunity to get it finished in 23. But that's still, you need time to assimilate and look at the plans, make sure it's what you want. That's the only thing I can see.
Our
Like scenario
experience,
one.
our experience
not-
recently with permitting is it's taking longer than it would even during normal times. And
Okay,
so, right, so I know that they put a healthy buffer in here, and but really that's whatever this committee believes is appropriate, and we will follow that because your middle name is advisory.
Well, they're talking about it being well into the end of 24 anyway, right? Not 23.
Dependent on permitting schedule.
I'm just looking at that, at the construction.
Yeah, they did this conservatively, I believe. Luke, I can step back if you want to take that.
correct. I've got it on both scenarios. The one that they showed you first was the one at the bottom, scenario 2. So the opportunity to pull the construction in is dependent on permitting and when you can start the Batmore, that's exactly what I was thinking. If all you have to do is clear the trees out before the moratorium, then maybe we could do a sub project. There's ways to tackle that.
Why does the moratorium move from 6 to 9 months?
That's the permitting.
Oh, at the end of that, I'm sorry, I missed the color change there.
Can you scroll, let's see, can you scroll up, that, the 30% design or 30% cost estimate in December? I mean, the way, personally, my feelings about the presentation is they've responded to our input with solutions, and I don't have any issues necessarily with what I heard. But I want to throw this out there. How does the cost estimate correlate with our feedback? It's not a rhetorical question. It's something that we should consider. And
Well,
if we approve or make that recommendation now, that doesn't mean that there's still more design to take place, more change orders up or down that are possible as well from a design standpoint. I don't necessarily feel like we need to wait a month if there won't be time well spent over the course of an entire month.
Yeah, they're not stopping. There's some other things that they can update, and they're working on those. But the intent is, how it goes when you move from 30 to 60 is you've locked in on the site plan, so they can start estimating those aspects. If we go back and say, all right, add a pavilion and take out the boat ramp, well, that changes things.
Yeah, it'd be better to give them that information, sooner than 30 days from now.
The cost estimate will just take a little longer to get to. A couple of things that talking with them, on the lower Riverside piece that I'll mention is the way they're designed. If we come back and want a bigger boat ramp, it has the capacity to potentially do that. The other piece is for extended parking. If you were to go past the turn around and into that grassy area, that section could be made into, overflow event parking. So I just wanted to make that's one piece that turnaround actually provides as well. So for the future.
Lucy has a question.
Do you mean like parking in the grass? You would kind of go beyond the boat ramp and then have people parking in the grass for events?
Yes.
But that's where my pavilion goes.
What about your gazebo? That's already there.
I'll talk with them about pavilions and see what we can come up with. What's not shown, if you're looking on the left-hand side, they look like specks on your glass. Those were all trees. And so all those green space back in there, when you walk it, maybe there's a place where they can fit it in, but it's really just I don't know how much pavilions cost, but do you want to add that to it? Or we have that as a option at the tail end of, with funding, et cetera.
I think people will be upset without the pavilion too. It's used a lot. I don't know. I mean, I know there's a record of people reserving it, but there's a lot of people that just show up down there and use it. And I think it would be
I would say it's a 1-for-1. We're adding one and taking one away, but that other one is probably not similar use. So
yeah, it's different. I feel like down below is more low key and kind of current use as it is, and the one up top will be different. It'll feel different up there.
Ryan, can you give us a sense for how the shelters are utilized on the weekends? How many rentals we receive on a typical Saturday with nice weather?
I mean, it's not atypical to see 2 or 3, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday out there. But right now, there's not a lot because the weather's cold. But I mean, there's a lot of weekends where they're booked up the whole weekend.
Right, like 2 or 3 each day, each of those days.
Yeah.
That are reservations, in addition to people just showing up and there's no one in there, so I'll sit down too. So I do understand, and just from observation, some of our data would say that shelter is used a lot.
Yeah, like I said, I'll compile the data, but it's going to be misleading because, as y'all were saying, there's a lot more walk-up people or first come, first serve that use it. Obviously, we don't have any way to track that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it'd be possible. It sounds like it's not easy to keep it near the parking, but I've seen over the years, seniors using it quite a bit, and also birthday parties and such. A lot of people haul a lot of supplies under that pavilion. And I think folks would really appreciate not having to walk too far. But again, that might not be possible. I know there's some engineering challenges to keep it close to parking.
Yeah, and when we toured Silverline last week, is that pavilion that's close to the river, is that going to be one that we will be renting out to people as well? So we would still be gaining one in town, even if this one is demolished.
That's our current plan. I think one of the agenda items today is to talk about a business plan for the parks. So that would encompass shelter rentals. And the way the shelter is, or the pavilion is designed at Silverline Park, it actually is under 2 roofs and there's a split between. And some folks may be skeptics that they could be used separately or independent, one or the other. But that was part of the design process, or the thought process, was actually it could be used for 2 smaller, groupings at Silverline Park. I don't know if I answered that question, Chris.
You did. I mean, I just know from our experience, we never have enough shelters at our parks. And so I hate to lose one when I know that is an opportunity for, a low cost opportunity for community members, but also that is one of the opportunities we have to make back the money that we're spending on some of this stuff. And so if we could even you know, if they do demolish that one, build one of a similar size somewhere else in the park, I think that that would be good. And the reasons that Anne and Coral and other people have brought up here too, I think, you know, sort of demonstrate that as well.
And just to throw back on my recreation hat, I know the other two that they showed they're fairly close to each other. I don't know that I see a lot of people wanting their birthday party right next to somebody else's either. So I know it could be run independently, but I think most people aren't going to do that because they're not going to want their event to be kind of right next to somebody else's.
Another issue with the making recommendations is that we're doing it at this point divorced from the cost implications of them. And I always feel a little uncomfortable doing that. I'll pick on the boat ramp because it's one that we've talked about a lot, but there, are we still talking about another $250,000 for the cofferdam just to put the boat ramp in? Has something changed about that?
Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge.
So
I think that, yeah, so to your point, that one amenity is very expensive when you consider what is required to construct it. But unfortunately, I think it's a chicken and egg. The way they explained it, it's logical. It's chicken and egg type of decision, and it's not going to be binding. I don't think to say for this committee or even the board to say this is what we believe needs to be in there. And so we agree in principle that this is what we're looking at. The cost estimates come back, and it is, 25% higher than we anticipated, 40% higher. To then say nope, not proceeding any further. Luke, and you're talking with Equinox, is that their expectation as well, that they would come back after they prepared the cost estimates in December, so that in January there'd be a come to Jesus on this one with cost? I'm sure you said yes.
My shortcut's not working. Anyway, yes. Short answer.
well, based on that, then I would be more inclined to say, let's recommend, the whole 9 yards, and then look at it when we have numbers that we can associate with it, and include the option for the pavilion, or, frankly, anything else that could be added that we would want to have added. He mentioned that grills weren't in there. There might be other smaller amenities. And then that we, look at them promptly after we get the cost estimate back.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point that we then say, well, wait a minute, we like this, but, or.
You could, and a variation on that theme, Walt, could be to prioritize what you think are most important, especially when you factor or add back in a picnic shelter. There are some things you may wish to prioritize as a committee, which would lead you to the same result as far as recommendation. Maybe that's after you get the cost estimates, to your point.
I like that idea. I like bringing forward a recommendation of what we've seen. I really like that they've addressed the items that we gave them a couple months ago. And we could say that we prioritize the pavilion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to propose that we would vote on accepting the 30% designs as we saw them today, and would like to prioritize the pavilion in the designs?
You mean, when you say prioritize to the pavilion, meaning that, that there be a space to build new, or
right,
that there's a new one built?
That there would be a replacement of the one that's taken out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you did a great job last time, Lucy. I appreciated that. I would like for you to draft another one. I'm not sure that I would use the word prioritize, I think I would go with the language that they suggested, which was to include a pavilion if possible. And then
Yeah, in
when
the
we
best
get-
place. Yeah.
yeah, and then when we come back after we've got the cost estimate, so that would be presumably in December, January. And then that's when we go through and prioritize things.
Mhm.
Okay. I can write something up, but during this meeting, while we still have everybody here, should we vote on approving the 30% designs
Sure.
to include in that report?
Yeah. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Hold up a hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the vote is unanimous. And Lucy, you'll have that ready for the meeting on Tuesday?
Yeah, I think I can draft it on Friday and send it to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now on to communications and marketing.
I'm going to jump because I've got another meeting that I need to run to. I just sent a note. And Chris and I are all on the same page. We've all been collectively knee deep in finding a new branding agency, and Anne's going to fill everyone in on the turn of events and then the process we went through, sorting and looking at 4 different potential partners. And we've found one that we have decided to work with, and Eric has signed that contract. So I'm going to jump. My apologies. Thanks for a productive meeting, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Okay, so shortly after our October meeting, I got word that our talented AB Tech student had to drop her course because of some unforeseen family circumstances. So, which meant she could not continue on with the project. Though we did ask her if she could continue on her own unassociated with the class, and she said she just didn't have the bandwidth to do the job she wanted to do. So the instructor from AB Tech, Alyssa Phillips, recommended 2 local designers, John Hornsby and Reggie Tidwell from Curve Theory. And so we also, Chris and Coral reached out to some local folks, to other folks they knew that kind of are in this realm of design for the outdoor industry. And we received 4 proposals. And through a meeting with Luke and Eric on Monday, we decided to go forward with Reggie from Curve Theory, and the wheels are already spinning for a meeting to happen with him. And the timeline is still the same, to have the Woodfin Parks and Rec logo completed by mid-December.
Thoughts or comments? The student did put in some work. She didn't come up with any product, but she created some of the background information that presumably you all will be using with Reggie. That will be helpful and will save him time.
Yes.
You know, do we want to suggest that the town give her something? Did she do enough?
She did a lot, and she did do, I forwarded her the results of our first 2 meetings with her to Reggie, and he was very grateful and said that, you know, what she was doing was excellent, and it will allow him to kind of jump in more on the design end, as opposed to beginning with the investigation of the situation. So it's a good thought.
Well, I'll leave that to Luke and Eric. I just wanted to put it out there. We our budget has gone up substantially
Right.
from what we were going to pay her to, to Reggie's work. But I also think that we'll probably get something, that will fall in for sure more timely. Having worked with students, even good ones, and had sort of a mixed bag of experience myself. So
Thanks for bringing that up, Walt. We'll move forward with that.
And to be clear on the cost, Reggie's proposal came in at about $5,000, and for something long lasting as this has the potential to be, Luke and Eric felt like it was worth the investment.
Yes.
And that the town could go with that, right away.
Very appreciative of your work, Ann and Chris.
yeah, and just to clarify, is that a firm 5,000? Was that a firm 5,000 bid that he gave, or was
Yes.
it about
It was 5,000.
firm? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anything else, Ann or Chris? Okay, Brian.
Okey doke. Our project management subcommittee had opportunity to meet with Luke, Lucy, Gerald, and I, in addition to Luke, discussed. We asked Luke how we can support him in his new role, as well as offered some guidance and some historical info. And he'll circle back with us as we further dive into the topics discussed, kind of with a more comprehensive list of support topics, bringing us into the next 90 to 120 days. Ultimately, we introduced ourselves, backgrounds and experiences, and how we may be a resource to support Luke moving forward. Some of the specific topics of support from our team, Lucy with government processes, operations and planning, myself, asset management and maintenance, operation and planning, and Gerald with operations and planning, and engaging with the town with relevant planning stakeholder conversations like the floodplain administrator we discussed a bit. So definitely look forward to supporting Luke as we move forward. Our next steps, now that Luke is on board, next step as a subcommittee, considering that our team invested into supporting the development of a PM role and assisting to find the right fit, we can play more of our support role for Luke and shift to other focused topics as overall PGAC volunteers, like providing guidance for Luke related to asset management and maintenance, plan for the town parks, assist them with budget development related to operations, assist with developing a plan to operationalize the park after construction is complete, including things like outfitter relations and other related matters. And then, of course, continued and ongoing discussions with Walt, Eric, and Luke regarding how we can support and assist as volunteers from a PM planning and operational perspective.
Anybody else have anything to add? Thanks for the notes. Okay, I think we're going to circle back to some of the PM subcommittee in just a minute. So moving on to the new business, I put 4 subheadings under A, which is role of the French Broad River in shaping Woodfin a historic perspective. And that follows a conversation with Eric and Luke last week. And the gist of it is that not only with the pirate ship being a central focus of Silverline, but the general history of the river is going to be part of the signage and the information that goes all through both parks. And what is needed is information or the sources of information for that historical perspective, and it's not readily available. And there are, Eric has uncovered a few possible sources that he mentioned to me, but what we need is somebody to do some historical sleuthing. And I'm not sure, I'll let Eric expand on it a little bit more, but I'm not sure how best we might go about that, given, you know, the two subcommittees already invested in, you know, two different fields.
So I can jump in then. Well, my predecessor and Kennedy's dad was a bit of a historian. Obviously, I've uncovered some artifacts that he left behind. Very grateful to him. The pirate ship actually references river pirates that were haunting the French Broad River in the past. And I think for me, it's been difficult to piece together a story of how Woodfin has developed in and around the river, and what the river has meant to the town. And I think it would be really important to capture information, and then through storytelling, whether that be through signage or murals, perhaps on the Silverline Park building, or what becomes of the Silverline Park building, gives us some opportunity to tell the story and connect what we're doing in these parks to the history of Woodfin and things that make us unique. Our blue collar roots, manufacturing along the river. So trade routes, the trolley that carried workers and labor back and forth to the mills along the river. All of these parts are really important, and I've come to appreciate them, but I haven't necessarily had a great deal of time to devote to that. And for example, going to the North Carolina room at PGAC Library, or going to the Department of Cultural Resources, they have a records repository near the VA hospital. Locally, there are sources of information that we haven't tapped into formally that I'm aware of. And Kennedy might have a surprise in his pocket. I don't know if his dad might have like this trove of information, and if so, then we could leverage that as well. I think it'd be really incumbent upon us to use this opportunity as we're developing these parks along the river, refocusing attention to the river, to tell the story of the river verbally, not just as Equinox is doing, more figuratively or through design. So that's the pitch. That's the appeal for assistance in maybe just uncovering sources, or maybe doing some writing. None of the above is out of the realm of possibility, and all will be appreciated.
My thought was to try to find somebody who might take this on as it may be it could be either within the committee or someone that the committee knows that we could ask to do this. And when we did the trip with Rocky, the brakewoman described herself as a historian, and the information that she gave was, you know, mostly historical. So I don't know if we could approach her, or if there's, you know, somebody else. I'm sure that there's tons of people that are interested in local history. It's a matter of locating them, or one of us volunteering to, one or a couple of us volunteering to do that. Or knowing someone that might.
Nothing has to be decided today, from my perspective, unless you all feel strongly about something, or something is burning to get out of you. Just want to put this on the radar and on the drawing board.
What's the timeline, Eric? I mean, this has to do with signage, so.
Well, I don't know that signage I think is going to evolve over time, to be frank with you. And I think from historical markers, right now we have a lot of signage in the works that is more educational and speaking about what you're seeing in the parks. That's sufficient for now. I think this is something that could lag. This is something that could be 2 years in the making, or it could be something that we then solicit bids for. Mural design at Silverline in particular is the one that I think is going to provide a canvas potentially for some of the storytelling. So it does not have to coincide with any other parts of this project as I see it, unless someone else sees that differently.
Okay, so we've identified it as a need.
Yes.
We'll try to find someone that can do this. Ask around, talk to people.
Thank you, Walt.
Okay, and the next item is a business plan for Woodford Parks and Rec. And once again, Eric, I'd like you to expand on this because when you and Luke and I were talking last week, we discussed the fact that that looking beyond the actual construction and into the operation of the parks and all the ramifications of that, the budgeting, the maintenance, the personnel that are going to be required, that it would serve us well to start looking at that now. And that possibly the PM subcommittee might have the skills to do just exactly that.
I think you said it well. You summed it up, our discussion. We know that we need a business plan for what the parks are going to require to keep the shine on them. These are part of a larger parks system and future recreation programming. So I think that this would be helpful to articulate what it is that we know, what we don't yet know, what we need to know. And in anticipation of Silverline Park opening in the spring, there is some urgency or some anxiety around what is going to be the requirements from a resource point of view, whether that's staffing or outfitters, food trucks, picnic shelter rentals, all the above. And so again, this is an ask that may not be completed by members of this committee, but if you know of entities or organizations that do business planning and that could be helpful with this, or if someone does wish to take this on, at least building out some framework for that, to which then we can add in detail as we gather that information, that would be really helpful to us. It needs to happen. It's going to fall to staff to do that, and we've not gotten anywhere with it to date.
What are the elements when you say business plan? I understand like general templates. What are the elements that you're most interested in seeing there? And if there's a phasing opportunity, you talk about Silverline Park first. What does that look like?
Right. Yeah, I think phasing is going to occur naturally because the park's not going to come online immediately. There will be a gap there. So I think it could start smaller with what we do currently have, which would include Silverline Park. I'm thinking expenses, revenue sources, staffing. So we're thinking we need grounds, someone to maintain grounds. What type of skill level is required for that? We have, if we have volunteer groups, volunteer coordination, what does that entail? I had another thought too. Park ranger for security or for information. So that could be a volunteer group, that could be a park ranger type situation or park guide. What are best practices in this field, I think is what we're talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Luke, do you have anything to add to that? Or Chris, you have experience in this world?
Yeah, they just recently, did a job description study at Buncombe County, and I'm happy to share that information with you. Some of it was identified specifically for the type of parks that we had, but they looked at agencies across, very similar ones in North Carolina and ones across the nation and stuff like that. And so I've got a lot of information that I'm happy to share with you on that. Yeah.
Some of the things we talked about, I mentioned, or our subcommittee talked about, was the asset management and maintenance and such. Do you see that as part of this too?
No question. Absolutely.
Who is the town staff that will own it if we support and guide and help?
You're looking at them. Myself and
I see your picture. I don't see that.
Yes. Well, I think So Luke's formal title is Project and Facilities Manager. So you could see that his role could evolve to overseeing how we maintain and preserve what we've invested in. You all done such good work at identifying some of the shortcomings of the existing parks, and we're paying attention to that now too. So we don't want to lose ground. We want to keep these parks in good condition.
Sure.
Parking management, parking, event planning, what would that entail? And so it starts with a framework
Right.
that then we can fill in the parts.
So are you looking for help, at least, another way to look at phasing, I guess, would be, framework first and then just start,
Yes.
entering in the,
Yes.
discussing it. Okay.
Yes, we could parse it down to small bits once we kind of have an umbrella. And I think it's always easier to edit than to draft something. So if someone could draft and give us some general guidelines, these are the big buckets of concern or areas that need attention, then we can begin to fill that in, whether that's from members from this committee or others.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I would like to hear from Gerald, and I'll circle back with Lucy as well. Just kind of my gut feeling right now that I'm ready, willing, able to help with, whatever this morphs into, but initially supporting from the providing a framework,
Yes.
philosophy, I guess, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Gerald?
I agree with you. I think building that framework, we could certainly do that as we're working on that and talking with Luke and with Eric. When the framework certainly may expand and we can start delving into it more deeply once we get their input and approval to move ahead.
I feel an obligation to demonstrate to the community that we intend to keep these parks in good condition and to operate them with strategy and not just more tactical and reactive. So that's where I'm coming from.
Right. And just to clarify, and we could talk offline about this stuff too, in our separate meetings, subcommittee meetings, but as far as ownership goes, big buckets, parks and the Greenway side of things. The Greenway will be the responsibility of
Town of Woodfin.
the town of Woodfin, and the park will also be the responsibility of the town of Woodfin. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I was for some reason thinking the county will maintain some of the Greenway side of things.
No,
Okay.
this is part of the county's master plan. They are project manager for construction, through construction. Post-construction, it becomes property of the town, responsibility of the town.
Okay.
Yeah, and Lucy may be able to provide some insight on that. The primary reason why Buncombe County is sort of acting as a project manager is we're the fiscal agent, but we don't have a maintenance department in our parks department. So it would be our general services, and they don't want to necessarily add people for an asset that's not in the unincorporated part.
Okay. All right. So as far as our subcommittee meeting goes, Luke, what are your thoughts in engaging with us regularly, or what comes to mind there? Like monthly. When I say regularly, we meet monthly, and it's usually the week before these meetings. Well, last time it was prior to this meeting. I can forward you the regular meeting requests if you're open to, maneuvering through this process with us.
Yeah, I usually like to don't change things. Let's continue with what has been working in the past, and then we'll make modifications on the way.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll circle back with Lucy, but when we talked about this, as far as next steps for our committee, during our last subcommittee meeting together. So this aligns very well, and I'm excited about it.
I think as you start building the framework, it's also going to engender, even more thoughts or things that need to be included and will be particularly valuable at chipping away with it, whether it's something that the subcommittee does or whether, as Eric alluded, that it gets farmed out for somebody else. It'll be a scope of work that should be very helpful.
Agreed.
Any other thoughts? Okay, under old business, last Friday, we did the Craggy Mountain Line trip. I'd like to hear what some of your all's thoughts were about that.
And I'll start. I thought it was a very interesting, the most amazing thing to me. And I've walked the Beaver Creek area before when I was doing the Greenway plan for Whitman back 2007 or 8. But to have that much undeveloped property in the middle of Whitman and trying to determine what to do, it's an asset and a challenge, because determining what to do with it will be an interesting process.
For myself, it's been I don't know, a number of years since I was on that ride, and I enjoyed it as a ride. But I also thought that Rocky made a couple of points that need to be highlighted. One of them I've already raised, which was the parking, and he made a point of saying that you know, that it was in the existing parking lot, it was too close. Also, where he currently stops, I guess, is going to be completely changed. We noted that the where he stops now is right by the bathrooms, and they don't look very good. I think Ann's already addressed the fact that we need to do something to upfit those. Two issues that he raised that sort of surprised me, but I think that we need to pay attention to. One of them was graffiti. That graffiti is something that he contends with by painting over it, particularly the bridge across the creek is where he mentioned that to me. And when asked what his sort of ultimate wish list was, I was surprised, one, that he didn't have much to say, but that he also made a very impassioned plea that there be no alcohol in the park. Now, he's coming from a faith-based perspective on that, and experientially, apparently, with alcohol in his family. But the role of alcohol is something that we haven't addressed at all. Presumably, that will be part of what you know, the new framework is going to address. So those were a couple of the takeaways for me. That, and seeing how big a 30-foot wide ramp is at Silverline, particularly when they're talking about a 40-foot wide one at Riverside. Any other thoughts? Okay, did we lose Eric or Luke? Are you going to give the project updates? You are? Okay.
Eric hop off. He was gonna. He had a portion of this and for parks maintenance. I wasn't prepared to present this, but I think we can look at this and see what is he had on there. Looks like they tried short term and they're going to go back long term. Need to do a comprehensive park facility assessment replacement schedule. I think a lot of this will tie into the asset management tool that we're looking at here. Any other questions on this? I wasn't I can take notes. If you have questions, I can circle back with him.
This came about because I had requested an update because last month, after most of the items that were on the list were going to be done. And I've driven by and seen that some of them have in fact been done, but I didn't check all of them. So this is a response to sort of a continuing state of affairs at the existing parks.
Right. All right. Now that what I was prepared to talk about, the Greenway. So general project update. I've already heard about the communication side, so I'll kind of skip over the branding. Excited about that, working with Curve Theory. For the Riverlink, we've been talking with their new executive director. I guess she's been there a year, new to me. You guys are all new to me. And really changing what they're focusing on is more the fundraising aspect. We've scheduled next Tuesday, I believe, is another way to get them. Some folk, I've reached out to Buncombe County as well. I'm bad with names, Jim. However, we're going to get Riverlink and those guys on the Craggy Mountain line as well to try to do that same experience that you have, so they can familiarize themselves with the terrain. And then when TDA opens their window for grants, that we can be best positioned to request kind of phase 2 with that. Silverline Park, I've got some pictures here moving forward, so I'll just give a quick update. Basically, they're working on the ramp. They're working on basically all we have to do is finish the paving aspect. They're currently building the boulder toe wall. For the vertical structures, all that's left is to install the roofing. We're waiting on just the material to come in. And so we're looking at, I've got 2 schedules for you. One is probably a ribbon cutting. What you would say to the public is we're targeting like a springtime opening. I'm pushing them to be finished by the end of the year so that we can ensure a springtime opening. Change orders, we've got a couple coming in from Judd, working through them. It's a little bit of a challenge because I'm just jumped on board, but trying to just push back on all the stuff I see that's coming in, and just really trying to ensure that these are logical and worthwhile change orders. Some of them, yes, we're going to be accommodating for some of the price increases that we've all seen. Lumber's gone up 50%, and those type of things. I think that's reasonable. So just working through that. Had a good conversation with PFA architects about the public building design. So hopefully I think in about 2 months, we should have some conceptual plans of what some concepts that we can potentially utilize that building for. One of the hard things is it's in a floodplain, so it really limits what we can do. So more coming on that. Riverside Whitewater Park, we've already discussed that, so I'll kind of skip through that. And then for Greenways, I think everyone's heard about the staffing changes, and I think what this does is it introduces a little bit of risk. So we're working with the interim director, but I will say kind of the good news piece of that is design is proceeding. So hopefully we'll continue this. There's like a 2-month window there, so that they're continuing on. I'm meeting them out here at the end of the week to walk the site, but that hopefully will allow time to fill that role and moving forward, so we don't have to lose too much time there. All right, so I like pictures. What you're looking at, I don't know if everyone's been out there, and if you don't like seeing these, just let me know. So that's the boardwalk over the constructed wetland. Looks great. You can kind of see this little, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the bump out, when we were talking signage and things like that, that little bump out in the boardwalk is where that signage will go. And so there's different places like that throughout. The picture on the right is a screen where we're going to put the porta-johns. So that's the temporary bathroom facility for this park. I think it's pretty exciting to see holes dug in the ground, and those are the footers or the footer locations for the pirate ship playground. So the material's been on order. We've got some things, you know, selecting color and all that aspect out of the way. Starting, they were supposed to schedule this week to start installing the foundation, the helical piers. So hopefully we'll get this rolling and we'll get out of the ground here in the next couple of weeks. The other two aspects, just, you know, training platform and just a picture of the site. Getting to the construction that we're doing, where you can see the cofferdam, kind of to orient yourself in the middle, see where that gray fabric is. That's the kind of the silt fence laid into the cofferdam, just try to hold the water back. All that's underwater. What you're looking at up there is the concrete slope coming down, and you can see all the large boulders kind of tucked into there. You know, these scope and scale on pictures is kind of deceiving. Those are like 4 to 5 foot long. So it is really shaping up and looking really nice. I think, Walt, I went out there with the Stadia and we measured it. And so as of water level right now, at this point, it would be 6 inches underwater. And then at the other corner, it'd be like 1.5 feet. So at current water levels. And I talked with Mark about that, and I think even at historic water level lows, we'll still have that concrete underwater. So I think just trying to make sure that this was installed for that end user, the kayaker, the boater, the tuber. How are they going to use that? Because we have the opportunity to. So I'm really, it's looking great. Any questions on that?
It's visually deceptive for me.
Yeah.
Looking at the water level.
I'll try to do a selfie with myself in the picture so you can. No change on the budget. It has been updated to include the $400,000 Partif grant. So we're still showing that 3.1 variance to funding is what we're looking at. And that's all I've got. Is there any questions? Good deal.
Okay, so the only other thing that I wanted to mention was that down at the bottom of our agenda, we've got future discussion items, and I've added several more things to that, basically based on other people's conversations. We don't have the time or the need right now to get into some of those, but at some point, we're going to need to prioritize them. With that, the meeting has gone on a little longer than I'd hoped, but we've covered a lot of good information, accomplished a lot. Does anybody have any comments before we adjourn? Thank you all for attending. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.